What would you do if the only way to protect yourself was to ask a stranger to pretend he loved you? That question hung in Eliza Hart's mind as the storm hammered the old boarding house like angry fists against a door. Rain poured in heavy sheets, soaking the dusty streets of Brook Hollow. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, and thunder rolled across the night sky. Inside, a weak fire burned low, its light flickering across peeling wallpaper and worn wooden floors. Eliza sat beside the fire, rocking her baby girl, Clara. The infant whimpered softly, her small hands gripping the fabric of Eliza's faded dress. Eliza pulled her shawl tighter around them both, whispering gently to calm her child. "It's all right, sweetheart. Mama's here." But her voice trembled with fear. Her life had been falling apart one piece at a time. Her husband Henry had died nearly a year ago in a mine collapse, leaving her with nothing but unpaid debts and a hungry child. The landlord had given her 3 days to pay what she owed. That deadline passed yesterday. She had nowhere left to go. Mrs. Crannell, the owner of the boarding house, shuffled into the room with her arms crossed and her expression tight. "Eliza Hart," she snapped. "There's a man at the door asking for a place to stay. Says he'll pay real coin. Go fetch another log for the fire." Eliza stood carefully so she wouldn't wake the baby and walked to the door. When she opened it, the cold air rushed inside. A man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered. Rain streamed off his coat and hat. His dark hair clung to his forehead, and his gray eyes swept the room slowly, taking everything in before landing on Eliza. He tipped his hat slightly. "Evening, ma'am." His voice was deep, steady, and calm. Mrs. Crannell didn't wait before judging him. "We ain't got beds for wanderers," she said sharply. "Boarding house is full." The man shrugged. "Don't need a bed, just a place near the fire." "No money, no heat," she snapped. Eliza watched his jaw tighten. He looked like a man who could argue, maybe even win, but instead he simply nodded. Understood. He turned toward the storm. Something inside Eliza shifted. Something quiet, soft, but strong. "Wait," she said, her voice small but firm. The man paused. "You can stay," she said. "I'll share my fire." Mrs. Crannell glared at her. "That's against my rules, Eliza." "He won't bother anyone," Eliza said softly. "It's cruel to send a man into a storm like this." After a long moment, Mrs. Crannell muttered, then waved her off. "Fine, but if he causes trouble, you answer for it." The man stepped inside, removing his hat and coat. His presence filled the room. Not loud, not demanding, just solid and steady. Eliza pointed to the fire. "You can sit here." He crouched beside the flames, holding his hands toward the heat. "Much obliged." Clara fussed again, and he glanced toward the baby. "She hungry?" he asked gently. Eliza nodded, embarrassed. "Milk's been scarce. Everything has." The stranger reached into his coat and pulled out a small bundle. "Bread and jerky," he said. "Not much, but I'll share." Eliza hesitated, pride fighting with need. "I shouldn't." "Then call it fair trade," he said softly. "You give me fire, I give you food." Quote. For the first time in months, she smiled. They shared the meal quietly while the fire warmed the room, but the peace didn't last. Heavy boots thudded on the porch and the door burst open. "Mr. Avery!" The landlord. His voice barked through the room. "Mrs. Hart! Rent's overdue. You got until dawn. After that, you and the kid are out." Eliza froze, her arms tightening around Clara. Before she could speak, the stranger rose slowly. "She's not leaving." Avery turned, anger flashing in his eyes. "And who are you?" The man stepped forward. "I'm her husband." Time froze. Eliza's heart stopped. Avery scowled. "She told me her husband was dead." The stranger didn't blink. "You must have heard wrong. Mr. and Mrs. Hart are just fine. And you'll have your rent by week's end." Thunder cracked outside, shaking the walls. Avery's eyes shifted between them. The baby, the stranger, Eliza's stunned face. Finally, with a low growl, he turned. 1 week. Then he slammed the door. Silence fell. Eliza stared at the man, her breath shaking. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you do that?" Quote. He looked at her with gentle steadiness, You looked like you needed help." She swallowed hard. "I asked you to share the fire, not to." He tipped his hat, a faint, crooked smile forming. "Guess I got carried away, Mrs. Hart." The name sounded strange, but safe. She took a slow breath. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once. "You can call me Caleb." And in that moment, she had no idea that this quiet stranger was not a poor wanderer at all, but a wealthy rancher whose land stretched farther than the pine-covered hills outside. And that one small lie would change both of their lives, forever. The morning came calm and pale, with the kind of gray sky that looked unsure if it wanted to rain again, or finally let the sun through. Eliza awoke slowly, her baby curled against her chest, warm and safe. For a moment she forgot the night before, then the memory rushed back. The stranger, the fire, the lie. Her heart beat faster. She rose quietly and stepped into the main room. Caleb Turner was already awake. He stood near the fire, rolling down his sleeves after fixing loose boards on the window frame. A hammer lay beside him. Eliza blinked. "You fixed it?" Quote. He nodded. Wind kept whistling through. Figured sleep would come easier if the house wasn't arguing with the storm. Eliza didn't know what to say. No man had lifted a finger to help her since Henry died. Not one. Mrs. Crannell stomped in, holding a cracked teacup. "Well, since your husband is so handy," she muttered, stressing the word husband, "maybe he'd like to pay his share today." Caleb didn't even hesitate. "I'll settle things soon." Mrs. Crannell eyed him suspiciously, then walked away. When the door shut behind her, Eliza's cheeks burned. "I can't believe she thinks we're married," she whispered. Caleb looked at her calmly. "You asked me to pretend." "I did." "Yes," she said quietly, "but now the whole town thinks something that isn't true." He studied her for a long moment. "Would you rather they think you're alone and struggling?" The question hit her harder than she expected. She didn't answer. Later that morning, they walked into town together. The air smelled of damp soil, chimney smoke, and the faint sweetness of pine. Mud squelched beneath their boots as shop doors creaked open, and townsfolk swept rainwater from porches. People stared, not mean, not mocking, but curious. A few women whispered behind gloved hands. Men nodded, tipping their hats. Eliza held Clara close and tried to ignore the heat rising in her cheeks. At the general store, Mr. Collins greeted them with a grin. "Morning, Mr. and Mrs. Turner." Eliza froze. Caleb simply nodded. "Morning. Need flour, sugar, milk for the baby." As Mr. Collins packed the order, he studied Caleb. "You from around these parts? You look familiar." Caleb's tone stayed steady, just passing through. But Collins gave a slow nod, like a man storing away a puzzle piece that finally made sense. When they stepped outside, Eliza finally spoke. "You shouldn't have bought supplies for me." Caleb adjusted the bag on his arm. "You didn't ask." "I don't want charity." He stopped walking and faced her. "It's not charity." Quote. "Then what is it?" Quote. Caleb's voice softened. "Help. And there's no shame in accepting that." Something inside her softened, but pride still pushed back. "You barely know me." Caleb's gaze was steady. "I know enough." They walked the rest of the way in silence. That afternoon, Caleb chopped firewood behind the boarding house while Eliza sat on the porch, mending clothes for Mrs. Crannell. Every now and then, Clara giggled at the sight of Caleb tossing small wood chips toward her tiny hands. Eliza watched him carefully. He worked like a man used to labor, but not desperate for it. His boots were sturdy but expensive, his coat too fine. His movements confident, practiced, not of a man hired for odd jobs, but someone used to giving direction. Something didn't fit. When he paused to wipe sweat from his brow, he caught her looking. "What?" She shook her head. "Nothing, just thinking." His expression softened. "That can be dangerous." Before she could reply, footsteps stomped up the porch. Mr. Avery stood there again, his smug expression back in place. "Well now," he drawled, "heard you've been settling in nice with that new husband of yours." Eliza stiffened. Caleb stepped up beside her, jaw set. "You'll have your money." Avery smirked. "Hope so. But I'm not known for patience. Caleb stepped closer. I didn't ask for your patience. The air tightened. Avery's grin faltered. You talk big for a man who walked into town with nothing. Caleb's eyes hardened. You're welcome to find out how wrong you are. Avery muttered something and walked off. When he was gone, Eliza exhaled shakily. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Yes, Caleb said quietly. I did. She looked at him carefully. Why? His answer was simple. Because no one should speak to you like that. Eliza swallowed, her voice softening. You're a strange man, Caleb Turner. He gave a faint smile. Been called worse. That night, when Clara fell asleep and the fire glowed low, Eliza sat across from him. I'll pay you back, she whispered. For everything. Caleb looked at her gently. You don't owe me. She stared into the flames. I just don't want to need help. His reply was steady and quiet. Everyone needs help sometimes. Their eyes met, and for the first time in a long time, Eliza didn't feel judged or alone. She felt seen, and that scared her. More than the storm. More than the debt. More than the lie. Because pretending was never meant to feel this real. Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to know. The next few days passed quietly, but something in the air had changed. People in town whispered when Eliza walked by. Some smiled kindly, others stared with curious eyes. No one ignored her anymore. No one looked through her like she was invisible. And every evening, Caleb came back to the boarding house. Sometimes he brought supplies. Sometimes he fixed something broken. Sometimes he just sat near the fire without saying much at all. But Eliza noticed everything. The way his eyes softened when Clara reached for his hand. The way he made space for her at the fire without asking. The way silence with him felt safe instead of lonely. Still, questions filled her mind. Who was this man really? Why did he help her? Why did he stay? One morning, before the sun fully rose, Caleb saddled his horse outside. Eliza stepped onto the porch, tightening her shawl around her. You're leaving? She asked quietly. He nodded. Just business up north. I'll be back before dark. She wasn't sure why the answer made her chest feel tight, but she nodded. Safe travels, she whispered. Caleb hesitated before placing his hand gently on Clara's small head. Then he rode away. As the sound of hooves faded, a cold ache settled in Eliza's chest. Hours later, Eliza walked into town to buy flour. The general store was busy and loud. She waited quietly until she heard Mr. Collins whispering to another man near the counter. It's him, I'm telling you, Caleb Turner, owner of Turner Ranch, richest man in the county. The other man scoffed. What would a man like that be doing, pretending to be married to a widow? Collins lowered his voice. That's the mystery. Eliza froze. Turner Ranch. The name hit her like cold water. She didn't wait to hear more. She rushed out of the store, her heart pounding. Caleb hadn't just kept a secret. He'd let her pity him. He'd let her think they needed each other the same way. She walked for miles, following a dirt road north, past fields, past fences, past cattle grazing against rolling hills, until she saw it. A ranch stretching farther than she could see. Buildings, barns, horses, workers. A life of wealth. A life she did not belong in. Two ranch hands saw her and pointed her toward the main corral. There, Caleb worked beside a fence, sleeves rolled, sunlight catching the strong lines of his face. He turned. When he saw her, his smile faded. Eliza, why are you? She cut him off with a shaking voice. You're Caleb Turner. He didn't deny it. You own all this. He set the hammer down gently. I was going to tell you. Tell me when, she asked. Before or after the whole town thought I chased a rich man to save myself? Quote. Caleb stepped toward her. That's not how it is. Quote. Her voice broke as she whispered, I begged you, thinking you were just like me, struggling, alone. His jaw tensed, and I was alone. Until you. Eliza shook her head, stepping back. I can't stay. Not now. Not knowing the whole town is laughing behind closed doors. No one is laughing. You don't know that, she whispered. Silence stretched between them. Finally, she said softly, Thank you for helping me, but I can't pretend anymore. Then she walked away, even though every step felt like it tore something from her ribcage. Caleb didn't follow. Not then. That night, the wind turned cold again. Clara cried softly in her sleep, her little forehead warm with fever. Eliza tried everything she knew, but fear crawled through her chest. When Clara's breathing grew weak, panic rushed through her like fire. She wrapped her baby close and stepped into the freezing night. Only one name filled her mind. Only one person she trusted now, even if she didn't want to. She reached the Turner Ranch long after the moon had risen. Her hands were shaking when she knocked. Caleb opened the door almost instantly, his eyes widening at the sight of her. Eliza? Her voice broke. She's burning up. I didn't know who else to... Caleb didn't let her finish. He lifted Clara gently into his arms and led them inside. The house was warm, filled with firelight. He placed Clara near the hearth and gathered cool water and medicine. Willow bark, he explained softly. It helps bring down fever. Trust me. Eliza watched as his large hands worked carefully, brushing Clara's hair back, cooling her forehead, checking her breathing. His eyes were steady, calm, full of care. Hours passed with them sitting on the floor near the fire. Eliza held Clara while Caleb stayed close, watching over both of them. Just before sunrise, Clara's fever broke. Her breathing calmed. Her little body relaxed. Eliza burst into tears. Relief, exhaustion, fear, and something deeper. Caleb reached for her hand. Eliza, he said gently, you and Clara belong here. Not because you need help, not because of what people think. He paused, voice softer now, but because this house hasn't felt like a home in years until you walked into it. Eliza looked up at him. In his eyes, she didn't see wealth or power. She saw a good man, a lonely man, a man who had chosen her long before she realized. Her voice trembled. And what am I to you now, Caleb? He squeezed her hand gently. Someone I don't want to pretend with anymore. Silence wrapped around them, not empty but full. Then Caleb whispered the words she never expected. Eliza Hart, will you stay and build a life here? With me. Not because you have to, but because you want to? Eliza looked down at Clara, safe in her arms, then back at him. Her heart finally stopped running. Yes, she whispered, tears falling again. Yes, Caleb Turner, I'll stay. This time there was no pretending, only truth, only warmth, only a new beginning.